When Hillary Clinton looked President Trump in the eye on live TV and said, "History will remember you as a criminal who should be in prison," she made the same disastrous mistake every corrupt politician makes. She'd forgotten she was taking on a man who had spent 8 years gathering evidence on her deleted emails, her foundation's pay-to-play deals, and her part in selling off 20% of America's uranium to Russia. Fox News had put together what they were dubbing the 2024 debate. What America wanted was Trump versus Clinton, the ultimate rematch. It all began as just some talk on social media. People wondered, what if Trump and Hillary debated one more time, but this time with all the proof that had come out since 2016? We're talking about the WikiLeaks emails, the congressional investigations, the FBI reports, the Clinton Foundation bombshells, the Uranium One papers, everything Hillary had dodged during the 2016 race, by calling it all fake news or Russian lies. See, Fox put the offer on the table. Trump accepted on the spot. This was the moment he had been waiting for. At first, Hillary's camp said no. But as Trump's own legal issues started stacking up in 2023 and 2024, she had a change of heart. She believed the indictments against him made her look right all along. She felt that history had finally proven her point. She figured she could at last get her revenge on the man who defeated her in 2016 and had been living in her head ever since. But her plan was to go on live television, brand him a criminal, and just watch him squirm. She had absolutely no clue what Trump had in store for her. For 3 solid weeks, Trump had been working non-stop with his legal team, opposition researchers, and even former federal prosecutors to put together what he called the Clinton Crime File, a complete dossier on every single Hillary Clinton scandal, backed up with documents that could withstand any challenge. And this wasn't going to be about trading insults or getting personal. This was going to be about pure facts, hard evidence, and the receipts to prove it all. There were emails dug up through Freedom of Information Act requests, FBI reports that were either declassified or leaked, and transcripts from a whole host of congressional hearings, along with State Department cables that connected Clinton Foundation donations to government favors. He had the Uranium One contracts and the financial records to go with them. He had the findings from 8 different investigations into Benghazi. And he had the WikiLeaks documents, all verified as authentic by multiple sources. It was all meticulously organized into color-coded binders with tabs, cross-referenced, fact-checked over and over, and ready to be displayed on the huge screens Fox had set up behind the podiums. Trump even hired a documentary filmmaker to create visuals for the most damning pieces of evidence, like timelines that showed donations rolling in right before favorable government decisions were made. He had side-by-side comparisons of what Hillary told her family versus what she told the public about Benghazi, and financial charts breaking down the Clinton Foundation's income and spending. Every single piece of evidence was designed so that viewers could instantly get it, so that not even the biggest skeptics could deny it, and so that it would be absolutely devastating when he presented it all in order. But most importantly, Trump came prepared with a comeback for every possible defense Hillary could throw at him. If she claimed something was already investigated, he had the investigation's own findings to show what they really found. If she claimed something had been debunked, he had the proof to show that it hadn't. And if she tried to change the subject by saying, "Well, what about your scandals?" he had a direct answer ready, comparing classified documents held in a secure government facility to a private server in a basement. He had practiced every possible scenario with his team, perfected his timing, and was ready to act like a prosecutor, not a debater. Trump wasn't there to debate. He was there to prosecute his case on live TV in front of 50 million people. armed with the very receipts Hillary thought she had buried for good. What unfolded over the next 2 hours would force Hillary Clinton to answer for scandals she had dodged for 8 years, confess to things she had denied for almost a decade, and face questions about her own criminality that made Trump's legal woes look like nothing more than parking tickets. If you have ever wondered what it would look like for Trump to finally confront Hillary with all the evidence on live television, so this is it. And just wait until minute 47, when he pulls out the Clinton Foundation's donor list. You can see her face just go completely white. The Fox News studio in New York was filled way past its limit, with 500 people in the audience for what was the network's biggest debate production ever. The crowd itself was pretty much split down the middle. You had Trump supporters in their MAGA hats and American flag apparel on one side, and Clinton supporters in Stronger Together t-shirts and I'm with her buttons on the other, with a small group of undecided voters caught in between, all of them just eager to witness this historic rematch. The stage itself was set up for maximum drama. 2 podiums stood angled directly towards each other. Massive HD screens were set up behind each candidate to display evidence, with Bret Baier at the moderator's desk between them, looking like a man who knew he was about to witness either the greatest debate or the greatest disaster in television history, and possibly both at once. Hillary Clinton arrived first, met with enthusiastic applause from her supporters and polite acknowledgement from the rest. She was wearing a white pantsuit, a symbolic echo of her choice on election night 2016, and she looked confident, almost eager. She had been preparing for this very moment since Trump's first indictment, and she would finally get her chance to call him a criminal on national television. Finally, she'd get to say, "I told you so" to America, and finally get her vindication for 2016. She had absolutely no idea what was about to happen. Donald Trump walked out 3 minutes later to a deafening roar from his section of the audience. The applause and cheering went on for nearly 2 full minutes, so long that Bret Baier had to repeatedly gesture for them to be quiet. So Trump wore his signature dark suit and red tie, gave the crowd that familiar sweeping wave, and walked to his podium carrying something Hillary noticed immediately: a thick, organized binder. There were actually multiple binders, stacked neatly by his staff at his podium. Her confident smile faltered just a bit. A prepared Donald Trump was never a good sign for his opponents. Bret Baier began his introduction by laying out the format for the evening. Opening statements, then moderated questions with rebuttals, followed by direct exchanges, and finally, closing statements. He reminded both candidates and the audience that this was about the issues facing America, not about personal attacks. That reminder would last for approximately 90 seconds. "Secretary Clinton," Bret began, "your opening statement, please." Hillary launched immediately into her prepared remarks, her voice strong and confident. "Thank you, Sir Bret. The American people deserve to know the truth about the man standing across from me. Donald Trump is facing multiple criminal indictments. He's accused of mishandling classified documents, obstructing justice, and attempting to overturn a free and fair election. He is, by any reasonable definition, a criminal, and he should be in prison, not running for president." Her supporters applauded with enthusiasm. She turned to face Trump directly. "Say, history will remember you as a criminal, Mr. Trump, a man who put himself above the law, above the Constitution, and above everything this country stands for. You are a disgrace to the office you held and a danger to American democracy." She smiled, confident that she'd landed a devastating opening blow. Trump smiled right back. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for years for this exact moment. She called him a criminal. he had brought receipts. Now, this was chess. "Well, Hillary," Trump said, his voice carrying that Queen's accent that his supporters loved and his critics mocked. "Thank you for that." "Very nice. Very eloquent. You've always been good with words. Not so good with emails, but great with words." The audience laughed. Hillary's smile tightened. "But since you want to talk about criminals," Trump continued, reaching for his first binder, "let's talk about criminals. Because I brought some evidence tonight. Actual evidence, not accusations, not opinions. Evidence." He opened the binder and nodded to the production booth. Images appeared on the massive screens behind both podiums. "Hillary, in 2015, you had a private email server in the basement of your house. True or false?" Hillary's expression changed. This was not how this was supposed to go. She was supposed to be prosecuting him, not defending herself. That matter was thoroughly investigated by the FBI. "I didn't ask if it was investigated," Trump interrupted. "I asked true or false. Did you have a private email server in your basement? Yes or no?" She paused, then answered carefully. "I used a private email system." "True." "Thank you." Trump pulled out more documents. "And on that private server, you conducted official State Department business, including classified information." "Correct." The classification issues were reviewed. "Hillary, was there classified information on your private server? Yes or no?" Another pause. "Some materials were later deemed to contain classified information." "Thousands of emails." "Classified information on a server in your basement." "Not in a secure government facility." "Your basement." He let that sit, then continued. "Now, in March 2015, you received a congressional subpoena for those emails." "Correct." "I complied with yes or no?" "You got a subpoena in March 2015. "Yes." "And after receiving that subpoena, what did you do with 33,000 of those emails?" Silence. Hillary knew where this was going. Trump didn't wait for her answer. He displayed the timeline on the screens. March 4th, 2015. A congressional subpoena is issued for all emails. March 25th to the 31st, to 2015. 33,000 emails are deleted. A computer technician uses BleachBit to make sure they can't be recovered. They destroyed multiple devices with actual hammers. You deleted 33,000 emails after you received a subpoena. That, right there, is called destroying evidence. It's also called obstruction of justice. The section of the audience supporting Trump just erupted in applause. Hillary tried to get a word in. Those were just personal emails. "Hillary, you decided which emails you considered personal only after getting a subpoena that ordered you to turn them all over. Then you used something called BleachBit, which, by the way, I had never even heard of until you, to make absolutely sure nobody could ever recover them. And you had people take hammers and physically destroy those devices." Then he turned to face the audience. "Folks, if I had deleted 33,000 emails after a subpoena, I would be in prison right now. I'd be sitting in a jail cell." But somehow Hillary did it, and absolutely nothing happened. He spun back towards her, his voice getting louder. "You want to talk about mishandling classified documents? I kept documents at Mar-a-Lago, a secure location with Secret Service protection in a locked room. You kept them on a private server in your basement." He was really on a roll now. His voice was getting even louder. You want to talk about obstruction? I cooperated with the National Archives. You destroyed 33,000 emails with BleachBit. He then pulled out printed testimony, displaying it on the large screens. It was FBI Director James Comey's statement, where he called Hillary extremely careless with classified information, yet still recommended no prosecution. Comey said you were extremely careless with some of our country's most sensitive information. But then, no charges. You called me a criminal, Hillary. You're the one who deleted 33,000 emails after a congressional subpoena. You destroyed evidence with hammers and BleachBit. But somehow, I'm the criminal? Give me a break. The reaction from the audience was absolutely deafening. His supporters started chanting, "Lock her up! Lock her up!" Meanwhile, her supporters were trying to shout them down. Bret Baier was struggling to restore any sense of order. Hillary just sat at her podium, looking visibly rattled. This was supposed to be her big moment of vindication, but instead, she was back on defense, explaining her email scandal all over again. She was the one who deleted 33,000 emails after a subpoena. But he's the one called a criminal, which just shows the double standard. Bret Baier tried to move on to his prepared questions, but Trump was already pulling out his next binder. Let's talk about your foundation, Hillary, the Clinton Foundation, because I think America deserves to know about the pay-to-play scheme you were running out of the State Department. You could see Hillary's face go pale. Trump noticed this and just grinned. After all, nothing ruins a charity's narrative faster than a look at its donor list. Your foundation raised over $1 billion while you were Secretary of State and during your presidential campaign. Is that correct? The Clinton Foundation is a charity that has helped millions of people all around the world. Yes or no, Hillary? Over $1 billion. The foundation did important work. Did it, or did it not, raise over $1 billion? She couldn't exactly deny the public records. Yes. Good. Now then, how much of that $1 billion went to actual charitable programs, to actually helping people? Hillary could be seen shifting uncomfortably. Before she could finish her sentence, Trump cut her off and displayed new data on the screens. It was an analysis from multiple charity watchdog groups, showing the Clinton Foundation spent only 5 to 15% of its revenue on direct charitable programs. 5 to 15%. That's the range. The rest of it? Salaries, travel, on expenses. Your own daughter, Chelsea, was making hundreds of thousands a year from this foundation. Your family traveled all over the world on the foundation's money. Then, he pulled out yet another document. And speaking of Chelsea, there are credible reports from WikiLeaks and investigative journalists that her $3 million wedding was partially paid for using foundation funds. While he challenged her to deny it, you knew her attorneys would have been screaming, so though this wasn't a legal proceeding, she could really only respond. Those allegations are false. Then release the financial records. Let's see where every single dollar went. But you won't do that, will you? Without even waiting for an answer, Trump moved to his next point. Now, let's talk about who donated to this charity while you were Secretary of State. The person in charge of American foreign policy? The one who could approve arms deals, international agreements, and access to the U.S. government. He then displayed a list on the screens, with donors and amounts clearly visible. It showed foreign government donations made during Hillary's time as Secretary of State. Saudi Arabia, $25 million. Qatar, $5 million. Algeria, $500,000. Kuwait, $5 million. Oman, $1 million. The United Arab Emirates, $1 million. Trump read each one out loud. He letting the massive numbers just sink in. Foreign governments donated tens of millions of dollars to your foundation while you were Secretary of State. And what happened right after they donated? He then pulled out copies of State Department cables and official approval documents. Saudi Arabia donates $25 million and then gets a massive arms deal approved. Qatar donates $5 million. They got meetings, access, and favorable treatment. Every single government that donated major money received something from your State Department. He turned to the audience. Folks, this is textbook corruption. Foreign governments pay money to your foundation, then get favors from your government agency. That's not charity. That's bribery with extra steps. Hillary tried to defend the donations, claiming they went through proper channels. Proper channels? Your foundation took money from governments that execute gay people, that oppress women, that funded terrorism, and you took their millions while you were America's chief diplomat. Trump moved to his next prepared section, Haiti. Let's talk about Haiti. The 2010 earthquake was a terrible tragedy. Billions in aid poured in. Much of it went through your State Department and your foundation. And what happened? He showed images of Haiti today, still devastated, still poor. Where did the money go? Haitian protesters have been asking that exact question for years. He displayed photos of protests in Haiti with signs reading, "Clinton, where's the money?" Your brother, Tony Rodham, got a gold mining contract in Haiti. Very lucrative, very convenient. But what about the regular Haitians? They're still waiting for the hospitals, schools, and housing they were promised. Trump's voice rose with indignation, real or performed. It played well. You took money meant for earthquake victims, and it disappeared into a maze of contractors, consultants, and Clinton associates. That's not charity, Hillary. That's theft. His final summary was devastating. The Clinton Foundation raised $1 billion, gave only 5 to 15% to actual charity, and took tens of millions from foreign governments while you were Secretary of State. Those governments got favors. The Haiti money disappeared. Your family got rich. He looked directly at her. See, that's not a foundation, Hillary. That's a pay-to-play scheme. That's corruption. That's selling American foreign policy to the highest bidder. He pointed at her accusingly. And you want to call me corrupt? Your foundation is under investigation by multiple agencies. Donations dropped 90% right after you lost the election. Why? Because people weren't donating to help a charity. They were paying for access to you. The Trump section roared with approval. The Clinton section sat in uncomfortable silence. Even some of her supporters looked troubled. A summary flashed across the screen. Just 5 to 15% went to charity. Another point highlighted that foreign donations equaled State Department access. The final comment described it as simple pay to play. Trump was on a roll, and he wasn't stopping. He grabbed his third binder, this one marked Uranium One, in large letters visible to the cameras. Now, let's talk about Russia, the Hillary. Real Russia collusion, not the fake Russia hoax you spent 4 years pushing. We're talking about actual Russians paying you while you sold them American uranium. Hillary's face flushed. The Mueller investigation found nothing, she retorted. $40 million, 2 years, and Mueller found zero collusion with me. But we're not talking about me, he shot back. We're talking about you and Uranium One. She had spent 4 years screaming about Russia. He, meanwhile, she was bringing up actual Russian deals. Trump displayed a timeline on the screens that was clear and undeniable. It was the Uranium One timeline, from 2009 to 2013. A Russian atomic energy company was seeking to buy Uranium One. The years 2010 to 2013 were pivotal for Uranium One. Investors donated $145 million to the Clinton Foundation. In 2010, Hillary's State Department approved the sale. By 2013, the sale was completed. Russia now controlled 20% of U.S. uranium production. And in 2010, Bill Clinton had received $500,000 for a speech in Moscow. You approved the sale of 20% of American uranium production capacity to Russia. True or false? Hillary tried a careful answer. That sale was reviewed and approved by 9 different government agencies. I didn't ask about 9 agencies. I asked about you as Secretary of State. Did you approve this sale? Yes or no? The State Department was one of 9. Yes or no? Yes. And the sale was approved with the State Department's agreement. Thank you. Now, while this sale was being reviewed, Russians and Uranium One investors donated $145 million to your foundation. True or false? I was not involved in the foundations. True or false? She couldn't deny the public record. Donations were made, she admitted. Trump pounded his podium. $145 million from Russians and people who directly benefited from the sale. While you were deciding whether to approve it, he said, pulling out more documents, and your husband, Bill, who definitely was involved with your foundation, got paid $500,000 for a speech in Moscow from a Russian bank while you were reviewing the Uranium One deal. Trump walked toward center stage, addressing the audience directly. Folks, let me break this down so it's crystal clear. Russians and investors wanted to buy American uranium. They needed Hillary's approval as Secretary of State. So, what happens? He counted on his fingers. 1. They donate $145 million to her foundation. 2. They pay Bill $500,000 for a speech. 3. Hillary approves the sale. 4. Russia gets 20% of our uranium. He turned back to Hillary. That's what we call a bribe, Hillary. That is straight-up collusion with Russia. That's selling out American national security just for foundation donations. He then pulled out one more document. And the best part is, the FBI was already investigating this. They had evidence of Russian bribery and kickbacks, but that investigation was completely buried. Why? Because you were supposed to win the 2016 election. If you'd won, no one would have ever known about the uranium. 1. Trump's voice rose to a crescendo. But I won. And suddenly, you spent 4 years screaming that I was the one who colluded with Russia, launching the Mueller investigation. 2. Impeachments. It was nonstop hysteria about Russia. He pointed an accusing finger directly at her. That is called projection, Hillary. You sold uranium to Russia while they funneled $145 million to you, but somehow I'm the Russian agent? Give me a break. He shook his head with exaggerated disbelief. Do you know what Mueller found after 2 years of investigating me? Nothing. 0. No collusion, no conspiracy, no deals with Russia. He held up the Uranium One documents. But with you, we have the receipts. $145 million in donations, a $500,000 speech, the uranium sale approved. It's all documented, all of it proven. Now that's actual Russia collusion. His final line was delivered with that perfect Trump timing. So, And let me get this straight. Russians donate $145 million to your foundation. Okay. You approve a uranium sale to Russia. Okay. Bill gets $500,000 for a speech in Moscow. Okay. But I have one phone call with Ukraine, and you try to impeach me. He threw his hands up in the air. Hillary, you're the one who sold out America to Russia, not me. And you spent years projecting your own crimes onto me so that nobody would notice. The audience erupted. A chant of "Lock her up" filled the studio. Even some of the moderates looked convinced by the documentary evidence. Hillary sat frozen, unable to find a way to counter the hard facts and financial records. She was the one who sold 20% of U.S. uranium to Russia. They donated $145 million, but Trump was the one accused of collusion. The screen prompted the audience to share the truth. Trump grabbed another binder. This one had photos attached right to the front. Hillary visibly tensed. Now, let's talk about the 4 Americans who died on your watch. Benghazi. Hillary tried to cut him off. That tragedy has been investigated by 8 different... Yes, investigated. And do you know what those investigations really found? They found that you lied to everyone, to America, and to the families of the dead Americans. You lied. You thought those investigations cleared you. Instead, they documented your lies. Trump displayed photos on the screens. Ambassador Chris Stevens, R. Sean Smith, Tyrone Woods, Glenn Doherty. 4 Americans killed on September 11, 2012, in Benghazi, Libya, while you were Secretary of State. They worked for you. They died on your watch. He pulled out a stack of security request documents. Before the attack, these men and others at that facility sent multiple requests for more security. They said they felt vulnerable. They said they needed protection. And your State Department denied those requests. Yes or no? Security decisions are complex. Yes or no? Were the security requests denied? The security situation was under constant evaluation. They asked for help. You said no. And they died. Is that accurate? Hillary couldn't deny what multiple investigations had already documented. 2 security requests were evaluated based on the available resources. They were denied, and Americans died. Trump then pulled out his most damaging evidence yet, Hillary's own emails. The night of the attack, at 11:12 p.m., you sent an email to your daughter, Chelsea. Let me go ahead and read it. He displayed the email on the screens for everyone to see. 2 of our officers were killed in Benghazi by an Al-Qaeda-like group. You told Chelsea the truth that night. You knew it was terrorism. You knew it was Al-Qaeda. He pulled out more documents, this time public statements Hillary made to the American people in the days following the attack. But do you know what you told the American people? You blamed it on a YouTube video. What a protest that never even happened. You stood right there at those caskets and told the families it was all about an internet video. He then showed a video of Hillary at the casket ceremony, telling the grieving families that the attack stemmed from an inflammatory video. You lied to their faces at their own loved ones' funerals. You knew it was terrorism. You told Chelsea it was terrorism, but you told those families it was about a video. Trump's voice became harsh. Oh, why? Why did you lie? Because it was an election year, just 2 months before the vote, and admitting it was a terrorist attack would have hurt Obama's whole Al-Qaeda is on the run narrative. So, you lied. He then pulled out the clip he'd been saving, the one everyone remembered. And then, When you were finally questioned about it in Congress, you said this. He played the infamous video of Hillary angrily shouting, "What difference, at this point, does it make?" The audience gasped. Even people who had forgotten the context remembered that moment. Trump let the clip play twice, then turned to face the audience. 4 dead Americans. And when asked why you lied about what caused it, she asks, "What difference does it make?" He pointed at the screen, which showed the 4 men's photos. It mattered to them. It mattered to their families. And it mattered to the Americans who deserve to know the truth. Trump's voice began to rise. You denied them security, and you ignored the warnings. You lied about what caused it. You lied directly to their families. And when they questioned you, your response was, "What difference does it make?" He started walking toward her podium. Those 4 Americans mattered, Hillary. They were serving their country. They were depending on you for protection, and you failed them. Then you lied about the way they died. And then you acted like it didn't even matter. His last line was quiet, but it cut deep. You ask, what difference does it make? Go ask their families. Ask the Gold Star families you stood in front of and lied to, right at their caskets. They will tell you exactly what difference it makes. The entire studio fell completely silent, with only the sounds of crying coming from the audience. 4 dead Americans. She lied about the cause. What difference does it make? Comment below if you remember this. Before Hillary even had a chance to recover, Trump moved on to his next line of attack. Let's talk about those Wall Street speeches. You know, the ones you got paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for. The same ones you refused to release the transcripts for. So, what exactly were you hiding? Hillary's private speeches, public lies. That's classic Clinton right there. Goldman Sachs paid you $675,000 for just 3 speeches. That breaks down to $225,000 a speech for about an hour of your time. What could you possibly have told them that was worth $200,000 to $25,000? Your Hillary attempted to deflect the question. Those were just paid speaking engagements, the kind where many former officials later release the transcripts. If you truly have nothing to hide, then show America what you told Goldman Sachs for $675,000. He didn't even wait for her to respond. But the thing is, we already know what you said. WikiLeaks went and released some of it. Let me just read your own words back to you. He then displayed the quote up on the big screen. You need to have both a public and a private position. You literally admitted that you lie to the public. You have one position that you tell the voters and a totally different one that you tell Wall Street. Citing her own words, Trump walked across the stage, building momentum. Publicly, you attack Wall Street, talk about breaking up the big banks and holding them accountable. But privately, you're taking millions from them. You tell the banks one thing, and you tell the voters something else entirely. He then started listing off more of her speech fees. Deutsche Bank, $485,000. Morgan Stanley, $225,000. Bank of America, $675,000. UBS, $225,000. That's over $21 million in speaking fees from the exact same banks and corporations you claim you're fighting against. Trump's voice was just dripping with sarcasm. What a fighter for the working class, he said, to taking $225,000 an hour from Goldman Sachs. Then he transitioned smoothly into his next attack. And speaking of the working class, he started, let's talk about what you really think of them. He then queued up the video. Everyone remembered the clip of Hillary at a fundraiser, saying that half of Trump's supporters belonged in a basket of deplorables. He made sure to let the entire clip play. Hearing it in context didn't help her at all, and she had called millions of Americans deplorable, irredeemable, racist, sexist, and homophobic. Trump then turned to face the audience. She called you deplorable. American voters, people who work hard, pay their taxes, and love their country. You're deplorable, he declared, simply because you didn't support her. He began pointing to different sections of the crowd. You're deplorable if you wanted to bring jobs back to America. You're deplorable if you wanted secure borders. You're deplorable if you believe in the Second Amendment. And you're deplorable if you love your country. His voice swelled with indignation. How dare you call American voters deplorable? These are patriots. These are people who work hard every single day. And you had the nerve to call them a basket of deplorables. Trump then walked back to his podium. You fly around on private jets while you lecture everyone else about climate change. You live in mansions while you preach about inequality. You somehow made $240 million after your time in public service. How does that even happen? How does being a public servant make you that rich? He then looked directly at her. You told Wall Street one thing in private, and you told voters another thing in public. You took $675,000 from Goldman Sachs, and you called American voters deplorable. And you still wonder why you lost. His final assessment of her was absolutely brutal. You're not a champion of the working class, Hillary. You're an elitist who looks down on regular Americans. And they saw right through you. That is exactly why you lost. Those 675,000 speeches, the deplorables comment, the private versus public positions. Share this video if you remember why she lost. Trump could see that Hillary was reeling, so he moved in for what he planned to be the final blow before his closing statement. You know what bothers me the most, Hillary? It has been 8 years. 8 years since you lost, and you still haven't accepted it. Have you? Hillary tried to rally, declaring, Russia interfered in our election. Here we go. Russia, Russia, Russia. It's always someone else's fault, isn't it? Never yours. 7 years later, and you're still making excuses, Trump said, as he pulled out what looked like a book. What Happened by Hillary Clinton. You wrote an entire book about why you lost. You called it What Happened. You should have just called it It's Everyone's Fault But Mine. He then theatrically flipped through the pages. Let's see who you blamed in here. Russia? Yep, you blamed them. Comey? You blamed him too. Bernie Sanders? You blamed him. Barack Obama? You blamed him. Joe Biden? You blamed him. James Comey? Yet again. Yet you blamed the media, sexism, the DNC, and voters who stayed home. And you blamed voters who went third party. He slammed the book shut. You blamed literally everyone except the one person who ran a terrible campaign and carried a record of corruption. You. Trump then pointed to polling data on the screens. You lost because you completely ignored Wisconsin, never even campaigning there once after the primary. You lost because you called voters deplorables. You lost because of the email scandal, the Clinton Foundation, and all those Wall Street speeches. You lost simply because Americans didn't trust you. He then brought up trust polls from 2016. A mere 36% of Americans viewed Hillary as trustworthy. Nobody trusted you. And do you know why? It's because of everything we've laid out here tonight. The deleted emails, the pay-to-play schemes, the lies about Benghazi, the Wall Street speeches, the corruption, the lies, and that feeling that the rules just don't apply to you. Trump's tone grew harder. But instead of just accepting it, you spent 4 years claiming the election was stolen, that Russia stole it for me, that I was an illegitimate president. You undermined American democracy for 4 whole years because you just couldn't accept that you lost. He pointed an accusing finger at her. Mueller spent $40 million and found zero collusion. But you just kept on saying it. You kept claiming the election was rigged, that it was stolen, that Russia handed it to me. Genuine anger now rose in Trump's voice. But the moment I question the 2020 election, suddenly I'm the threat to democracy. When you spend 4 years claiming an election was stolen, that's perfectly fine. But when I question one, I'm somehow destroying America. He shook his head in disbelief. So rules for thee, but not for me. That's just the Clinton way, isn't it? You get to say elections are rigged. You get to refuse to accept the results. You get to spend years calling me illegitimate. But if I do it, I'm the one who's dangerous. Trump then walked to the center of the stage to make his final point for the round. You never actually offered a gracious concession. You just blamed everyone but yourself. You spent years actively undermining the very election you lost. You managed to convince millions of Democrats that Russia stole the election, which, as the Mueller report proved, was completely false. He looked her straight in the eye. You just couldn't accept that American voters rejected you, that they chose me over you, that they looked at your long record of corruption and said, "No, thank you." So you blamed Russia, you blamed Comey, you blamed absolutely everyone. He delivered his final line with a look of pure satisfaction. But the truth of it is simple. You lost because you were a terrible candidate holding a corrupt record. And now, 8 years later, you still can't bring yourself to admit it. 7 years later. And she's still pointing the finger at everyone but herself. Comment bitter if you see it too. Brett Baier, noticing they were getting close to the 2-hour mark, tried to pivot to closing statements, but Trump simply held up a hand. Actually, Brett, I'd like to summarize everything we've gone over tonight, because I think it's crucial for America to see the complete picture. He stood up and strode to center stage, completely commanding the room. Hillary called me a criminal at the top of this debate. So, and let's take a look at who the real criminal is here. He started ticking off points on his fingers, pulling up each corresponding document on the large screens as he spoke. You deleted 33,000 emails after you received a congressional subpoena. Fact. The FBI documented it. You destroyed your devices with hammers, and even used BleachBit to make sure they couldn't be recovered. Fact. That was confirmed in congressional testimony. You kept classified information on a private, unsecured server in your basement. Fact. Comey himself called you extremely careless. Your foundation accepted $145 million from Russian figures right as you were approving the Uranium One sale. Fact. The financial records prove it. Your foundation took in tens of millions from foreign governments while you were the Secretary of State. Fact. The tax returns show it. Your foundation gave a mere 5 to 15% to actual charitable work. Fact. Charity watchdogs have documented it. You flat-out denied security requests in Benghazi. Fact. The investigation found it. You lied about what really caused the Benghazi attack. Fact. Your own emails prove it. You told the families it was all because of a video. But you told your daughter, Chelsea, that it was a terrorist attack. Fact. It's all documented in the emails. You took $675,000 from Goldman Sachs for giving speeches. Fact. Your financial disclosures show it. You openly admitted to having both public and private positions on issues. Fact. WikiLeaks released the proof. You called hardworking American voters deplorables. Fact. The video proves it. You have never once truly accepted that you lost back in 2016. Fact. Your own book and public statements. I prove it. Trump continued to walk across the stage. His voice was now building to a crescendo. Every single thing I have said here tonight is fully documented. It's in FBI reports, congressional testimony, your own emails, State Department records, the Clinton Foundation's tax returns, WikiLeaks, and financial disclosures. It's on video recordings. He spread his arms out wide. They are all facts, all on the public record, and all completely undeniable. He then turned to face Hillary directly. You stood there and called me a criminal, but you're the one who destroyed evidence that was under a subpoena. You called me corrupt, but you're the one who was running a pay-to-play foundation. You sat there screaming about Russia, but you're the one who sold American uranium to the Russians in exchange for donations. You claimed to have the moral high ground, but you lied about Benghazi. Yet you acted like you were fighting for workers, but then you called them deplorable. Trump's voice built to a roar. I beat you in 2016 because the American voters saw right through you. They saw the corruption, the lies, the pay-to-play schemes, the sense of entitlement, and the contempt for regular people. They saw someone who put their own personal enrichment ahead of public service, who sold access to the State Department, who lied to Gold Star families, and who called voters names. And he pointed at her, then at the audience, and then straight into the cameras. And tonight, in front of 50 million people watching at home, I have just proven it all over again, with evidence, with facts, with receipts you cannot deny. He walked back toward his podium, then turned for his final line. I beat you once because you were corrupt. I'm beating you again tonight because you're still corrupt. And America is watching, with the receipts. And the conservative section of the audience erupted into a standing ovation that went on for over 2 minutes. Chants of "Lock her up" filled the studio, mixed with USA, USA, USA. Hillary sat at her podium, unable to respond, visibly shaken. Everything Trump had said was either a documented fact or based on documented facts. She couldn't deny the emails. She couldn't deny the foundation donations. She couldn't deny her own words. And she couldn't deny the video recordings and congressional findings. For 8 years, she'd managed to avoid directly confronting all these scandals at once. She had dismissed them one by one as fake news, Russian disinformation, or Republican conspiracy theories. But Trump had just put them all together, with evidence, in one devastating 2-hour presentation. And there was nothing she could say to counter the documented facts. The video exploded across every platform with a speed that stunned even seasoned political observers who had watched countless viral moments come and go. Within 1 hour, it had 31 million views across YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and emerging platforms. Within 24 hours, that number was 94 million views. Within 48 hours, 187 million views. And within 1 week, a total of 267 million views. It was one of the most watched political events in American history. Deleted 33,000 emails, became the #1 trending topic on Twitter within minutes of the debate ending, and it stayed there for 3 straight days. Clinton Foundation trended right alongside it. Uranium One entered the mainstream consciousness for millions who had never even heard of the scandal. "Lock her up!" roared back into the cultural conversation. Conservative media went into overdrive, playing the debate in full multiple times. Fox News ran it on a loop for 48 hours. Newsmax and OAN featured special episodes breaking down each scandal Trump had exposed, complete with additional documentation and expert analysis. Conservative podcasters and YouTubers created hours of content analyzing every exchange, verifying every fact Trump had cited, and celebrating what they saw as total vindication. But more significantly, even the mainstream media couldn't ignore or spin the debate away. CNN, MSNBC, and the network news channels were forced to cover it extensively, simply because the viewership numbers were too massive to ignore. Their panels looked uncomfortable trying to defend Hillary against documented evidence. Fact-checkers who tried to defend her found themselves having to admit that Trump's core facts were accurate, even if they disputed his interpretations. The New York Times ran a surprisingly balanced analysis. Trump's debate performance built on foundation of documented controversies. The article noted that while Trump's presentation was inflammatory and one-sided, most of his factual claims were based on congressional investigations, FBI reports, and other documented sources. Even Trump's critics had to admit the evidence existed. The Washington Post's fact-check was forced to rate many of Trump's claims as true or mostly true. The deleted emails, the FBI's findings, and the Clinton Foundation donations, the Uranium One timeline, the Benghazi statements. They added context and Hillary's explanations, but they couldn't deny the underlying facts. Political polling showed dramatic shifts in public opinion within days. Before the debate, when asked if Hillary Clinton should face a renewed investigation, only 4% said yes. After the debate, 67% said yes. When asked if Hillary Clinton committed crimes that should have been prosecuted, the numbers were stark. Before the debate, 48% said yes. After the debate, that jumped to 71% yes. And on the question of whether Trump was justified in his 2016 criticisms of Clinton, the shift was incredible. Before the debate, 52% among Republicans agreed. After the debate, that number was 89% overall. The phrase, "lock her up," experienced a cultural resurrection. What had become somewhat taboo, even in conservative circles, and was often dismissed as extreme or inappropriate, suddenly felt vindicated to millions. Merchandise sellers couldn't print "lock her up" shirts fast enough. The phrase appeared at Trump rallies with renewed energy. Even moderate Republicans who had once been uncomfortable with it started using it. The Clinton Foundation faced immediate consequences. Donations, which were already way down since 2016, pretty much dried up completely. Major donors started demanding to know where all their money had gone. Several countries that gave money when Hillary was Secretary of State quietly asked for it back, wanting nothing to do with the situation. In less than 2 months, the foundation announced it was shutting down most of its work and letting its staff go. Legal experts and ex-prosecutors started showing up on TV to talk about the evidence Trump had laid out. Many pointed out that the clock hadn't run out yet on some potential crimes, especially ones tied to the Clinton Foundation's activities and possible violations of foreign agent laws. Alan Dershowitz, who had defended both Trump and Clinton before, went on several networks and said, "Like Trump or not," and he showed documented proof that brings up serious legal questions that were brushed aside for political reasons. Bar associations in several states started getting complaints questioning if Hillary's law license should be looked at because of the evidence of possible wrongdoing. And even though those complaints didn't go anywhere official, they kept the scandals in the headlines and on everyone's mind. The debate quickly became mandatory viewing in college political science and communications classes, but not in the way Hillary's fans would have wanted. Professors used it as a perfect example of how solid evidence can cut through even the cleverest political spin, how being prepared beats making things up on the fly, and how dodging responsibility for years only makes the final showdown that much worse. The Clinton debate, as it was called in schools, I was picked apart as both a piece of political drama and a lesson in how to prosecute a case. Conservative groups and media outlets, fired up by new public interest and using the roadmap Trump laid out, announced their own major investigations into Clinton-era corruption. Judicial Watch, a group that had spent years digging into Clinton scandals with public records requests, suddenly saw their donations skyrocket. Within just 6 months, they published hundreds of documents that had never been seen before, all backing up much of what Trump had shown. The question, where are the 33,000 emails, turned into a rallying cry. Conservative commentators started demanding that those emails be found and made public. Tech experts went on TV explaining that even though BleachBit makes it tough, pieces of them might still be lying around on backup servers or in NSA databanks. Legally, it was a dead end. But it kept the scandal buzzing in public conversations like it hadn't since 2016. Right after the debate, Hillary Clinton herself just vanished from the public eye. But stories coming from her inner circle painted a picture of absolute devastation. She canceled every single scheduled appearance within hours of walking out of the Fox News studio. Her social media, which used to be active every day, went totally dark. Her team just stopped answering calls from the press. Friends and old staff members said she was just shattered, humiliated more than they could describe, and couldn't figure out how it all went so wrong. According to sources talking to friendly reporters, Hillary watched the full debate replay the next morning, and then didn't leave her Chappaqua home for 2 weeks. She had been completely sure that Trump's own legal problems would be her advantage, that she could finally put him on trial in the court of public opinion, and that America would see she was right all along. Instead, she was the one forced to defend every single scandal of her career, with documented proof she couldn't deny, plastered on screens for millions and millions of people to see. The mental toll on her was said to be far worse than just a political loss. This was the second time Trump had taken her down. First by winning an election she was told she couldn't lose, and now by tearing apart her entire legacy using her own recorded mistakes. Her friends were worried about her mental state. Her staff worried if she would ever be able to face the public again. The woman who had lived for decades in the public eye, who loved the spotlight, who had weathered one scandal after another, had finally come up against a reckoning she couldn't escape. 3 weeks after the debate, Hillary's lawyer put out a short statement that political experts instantly knew was a white flag. Secretary Clinton has decided to step away from public life to focus on private pursuits and spend time with family. She will not be making further public appearances or statements at this time. The statement never once mentioned the debate, but it didn't have to. Everybody knew exactly why Hillary Clinton was stepping out of the spotlight for good. Trump had, at last, put a definitive end to her political career. Not with lawsuits or investigations, but by forcing her to answer for everything she'd spent years dodging, live on television, with the evidence right there for the world to see. Political insiders got the real message. She was finished. Trump had ultimately destroyed her political relevance by making her defend every scandal she'd spent years avoiding, live on television, without the usual filter of a friendly media. Suddenly, the 2016 election was completely reframed in the public's mind. What many had once brushed off as Trump's conspiracy theories or just partisan attacks were now viewed as documented concerns, all backed by solid evidence. The story quickly changed from Trump attacked an innocent woman to Trump was right about the Clinton corruption all along. Democratic Party leaders, while putting on a public face of support, were quietly celebrating her exit from the spotlight. They had long viewed her as a liability, someone stuck on 2016, and who pushed away swing voters and handed ammunition to the Republicans. One Democratic strategist was quoted anonymously saying, "Trump did us a favor. She needed to step aside, but just wouldn't do it on her own. Now she has no choice." 6 months after the debate, the Republican-controlled House announced they were forming a select committee with subpoena power to investigate the Clinton Foundation and Uranium One. And Democrats cried political persecution. But polls revealed that 64% of Americans actually supported the investigation after seeing the evidence from the debate. Trump himself rarely brought up the debate in later appearances, but then again, he didn't have to. The video did all the talking. It racked up over 250 million views. Hillary was left exposed and discredited by her own documented scandals. When a reporter asked him about it at a rally 3 months later, Trump just smiled and said, "I brought the receipts. America saw them. That's all that matters." A year after the debate, it was clear it had fundamentally changed how Americans saw the 2016 election, Hillary Clinton, and the scandals that had followed her for years. Everything she had tried to bury with claims of fake news and Russian disinformation had been dug up on live TV, complete with supporting documents. Trump had achieved his ultimate vindication, not in a courtroom or through an investigation, but on live television, using evidence to force Hillary to defend the indefensible in front of hundreds of millions of people around the world. This wasn't just a debate, it was a trial. Donald Trump didn't show up to talk policy points or discuss the future of America. He came to prosecute Hillary Clinton for the crimes and corruption that had trailed her for years but never seemed to stick, thanks to protection from the media and other institutions. For 2 straight hours, armed with documents, evidence, and facts, he put her entire record on trial for the American people to see. There were no friendly moderators there to shield her. There was no chance to just dismiss it all as fake news. It was just her, Trump, and the receipts, the deleted emails, the destroyed devices, the classified information on a private server, the Clinton Foundation's pay-to-play schemes, the millions in donations from foreign governments while she was Secretary of State, on Uranium One, and the $145 million from the Russians, Benghazi, the denied security requests, the 4 dead Americans, and the lies to their families, the Wall Street speeches where she admitted to having both public and private positions, calling American voters deplorables, and her refusal to ever accept the 2016 loss. Every last bit of it was documented, proven, and undeniable. Trump showed America something absolutely crucial. The scandals weren't just conspiracy theories, and they were documented facts she had skillfully avoided facing head-on until that very debate. The media had run cover for her. The institutions had protected her, but on that stage, she was up against someone who had gathered all the evidence and wasn't afraid to use it. And just like that, the whole house of cards came tumbling down. Hillary Clinton had spent years insisting that Trump belonged in prison, that he was a criminal, that he was corrupt, and that history would condemn him. And in the space of 2 hours, he proved that every single one of her accusations was just projection. He showed that she was the one who had destroyed evidence, sold access, lied to the families of the fallen, and enriched herself through public service. The receipts were undeniable. The 33,000 deleted emails were all documented by the FBI. The Clinton Foundation donations from foreign governments were documented in their own tax returns. The Uranium One and the $145 million were documented by financial records. The Benghazi lies were documented in her own emails. These were all facts, all proven, and all available for anyone to go and verify themselves. And that is precisely why the debate changed everything. It wasn't just Trump's word against hers anymore. It was Trump's evidence against her complete inability to explain any of it away. When you can't deny the documents, can't argue with the facts, and can't explain away your own emails, you've already lost. Hillary had wanted revenge. She had wanted vindication. She had wanted to finally stand on that stage, call Trump a criminal on live TV, and watch him squirm. Instead, what she got was 2 hours of her own scandals thrown right back in her face, with evidence she simply could not deny. She was exposed, discredited, and politically shattered. Trump, once again, was completely vindicated. A staggering 267 million people watched as he laid out the receipts, proving he had been right about Hillary Clinton all along. If you believe Hillary's crimes warrant an investigation, share this story. Comment, "Lock her up," if you remember what she did and feel that justice is long overdue. Because Trump just reminded the nation with evidence that is impossible to deny.